Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. I got to have these off to see you. Good to see you. Carolyn and I are both going to give this testimony today. I'll give what I remember, and then she's going to give when I was asleep or out of it or don't remember. And we want to thank you, each one, for being here. We thank you for your prayers during this time. I want to personally thank Carolyn for the way she is. Loved me, stood by me for 3 days. I don't think she ever slipped a wink. But it was, you need to come a little closer. You're behind me. Slip forward. I gotta see her. Okay. We'll get started here. We're here this morning to lift up the name of Jesus by telling my story of what God has done for me. It is my prayer that he be lifted up today and not us. And from Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9, the mind of man plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. We don't always take note of how God daily orders our steps. But as I speak this morning, notice how he directed our steps. On Monday morning, October the 13th, I did a most unusual thing. I went with Carolyn to a dentist appointment in Raleigh. On the previous Friday, she had mentioned to me that she had a dental appointment on Monday. I immediately said I was going with her, which even surprised me. I had never been with her to an appointment, and we were in the middle of wheat planting. And I just felt like I needed to go. Something in me says, you need to go with her. God ordered my steps that day that I be in Raleigh on that day. We arrived at the dentist's office a few minutes early. Before I sat down, I felt I needed to cough, and I told Carolyn I was going to step outside because I had to cough. I stepped into the lobby, reaching for the outside door, and that is the last thing I remember. Next thing I remember, I was waking up with the dentist bending over me, telling me to breathe, 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 while I was gasping for breath.
I was in the waiting room, and a lady came through the lobby door into the dentist office, dentist lobby. And she said, there's a man out here in the lobby. He's collapsed. He needs help. There's something wrong, something really bad wrong. I knew immediately that it was Dewayne. He had just stepped out the door, so I knew that it was him. And so I jumped up and ran outside to check on him. And I took the woman who found him, we had her go ahead and call 911. Dr. Emmerich and his entire staff came out through the door, and they were helping Dewayne as much as they could, just like he said, with telling him to breathe and trying to help him. The EMT arrived within minutes. They were already in our area, so when they got the call, they were there with just a few minutes. And they checked him out, first of all, for stroke, and he answered all their questions. He came to, and he was answering all their questions and stuff. The second EMT group arrived, and they took over, and they did all their evaluations and then decided to move him on to Rex, to the ER. And God ordained that EMT to be there and to move him on to Rex quickly, because if you know Dewayne, he does not go to doctors, and he doesn't go to ERs on his own. So I'm thankful that the EMTs came, and they said, yeah, you're going to the emergency room.
After arriving at the ER, I began to feel much better. All the kids had arrived at this time, and there was a crowd in the ER room, and they told everyone they had to leave except the patients. And if you were over 80, one person could stay with you, so Carolyn stayed with me. And they spent the entire, this is a salute to my kids, they spent the entire day in their cars, in the parking lot, till late that night. And we spent the entire day in the lobby of a very, very crowded ER. Late in the afternoon, I was placed in an ER cubicle where we stayed for a couple hours. About 8 p.m., the doctor came to me and said the blood proteins were increasing, which indicated a heart problem. He decided to keep me overnight. Then they moved me to the room 22 in the ER. This room had a heart monitor. Carolyn went outside to tell my kids they should go on home because the doctor was keeping me overnight. They very reluctantly went on home. I listened to the Dodgers ball game on my phone until the game was over, and I was watching the monitor, and I noticed in the ninth inning, the bullpen was about to lose it for the Dodgers, and my blood pressure began to go up. So I decided I cut it off. It went up about 30 points. So I cut it off and put my CPAP mask on and decided I'd go to sleep. And that's one of the last things I remember is putting my CPAP mask on and going to sleep. And then the next thing I remember is images of people around me, around my bed, and someone said, "Stand back." And my thoughts were, oh no, this is not going to be good. And then my body seemed to explode from within as the electrical shock was administered. They tell me there was a second one, but I only remember one, whether it was the second one or the last one. But that's the only thing I remember after putting that CPAP on was waking up hearing someone say, "Stand back," and I knew immediately what they were going to do.
I had a chair in the corner of room 22. Soon after he closed his eyes to sleep, I heard a strange noise. I thought perhaps it was his CPAP machine, because sometimes they do mess up. I walked over to see if I could fix it. At that point, everything happened so fast, and it's almost like a blur, because as soon as I realized that there was something wrong, this sweet, beautiful nurse, Lindsay Sams, came through that door like a bolt of lightning, and she started doing CPR on Dewayne. I stood back because I was completely stunned. I couldn't believe what was happening before my eyes. The room filled with people, and I stepped back so they could have some space. There were just people everywhere. Then a couple of nurses came to me, and they wanted me to leave that room and to move me to another room. I didn't want to leave that room. I wanted to stay there where he was. And they finally insisted that I had to leave. So they moved me around through the room into the hallway and put me a chair right beside his open door. And I could hear what was going on. And it was at that spot I heard somebody say, "We got a heartbeat." There was a sound of cheering from the staff and relief from me. "Lindsay, thank you, sweetheart. You did your job very well."
At this time, I would like to introduce to you the nurse who saved my life, Lindsay Sams, who I owe a great debt of gratitude I could never repay. We are happy to have you here with your parents today. They have driven down from Pittsburgh this morning. I'm sprung this on her this morning. Would you like to say something? You get her the mic.
Yeah, I don't have notes like they do, so forgive me if I ramble. But I remember they asked me this morning, they were like, "Do you remember anything from that day?" I was like, every moment is etched into my memory. Like they said, though, it all happens in such a blur. And I think, too, I remember that day I had another patient next door who I was in that room for so long. And I ended up taking my lunch break because I work 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. So my lunch break is normally like 9:30. And I didn't get to take it that night until like 11:15, 11:30. And I was so annoyed. I was like, oh my gosh. And then I got back from my lunch break, and Dewayne actually had a bed ready upstairs in the hospital, which normally they're able to put in transport and send the patient up to their new room. But this was the one floor in the entire hospital that I have to call report to before they can go up. So had it not even been that floor, he might have been, not in the ER and up on the floor, even in transport to the new room. And so as I called report, I was finishing calling report when the alarm went off and went in there and everything. And I think that's one of the things that, like they said, how God orchestrated every step. I think that's so true, even just in how my day went that day, and how God can even use the things that annoy you in your day to do something good. And had, his heart, when his heart stopped, had he been in transport, there would have been no nurses there because his heart rhythm had been perfect all day. And so there was no, some patients we have to send with a nurse, but there was no reason for him to be a nurse transport. And the floor he was going to is not staffed with as many nurses and as many doctors. And, they say, Lindsay, you saved his life. But really, I really believe it was God. And also, we had a huge team in the ER. We have respiratory therapists and pharmacists and doctors, and there was 4 doctors that came, and a nurse practitioner, and 4 nurses. And I just think it's such a testament. Even nurses that looked after my patients while I was gone, and the people in the cath lab who we went to first, and CT, and all these things. I think it's just such a testament of God's goodness. And I remember that night, the last thing that I said to Miss Carolyn was, me and another nurse went over and gave her a hug, and we were like, we'll be praying for him. Which, when you're a nurse in a hospital, you don't always say, because you don't, want to get in trouble or get in trouble for talking about God and how good he is and all these things. But I just was like, I feel like this is a safe place for me to say that, and just being able to give her a hug and say, I'm praying for him, and we'll be thinking of him. And then it was just so special and so beautiful. And I think it was just such a good reminder. I'm 23. I turn 24 next week. And I started being a nurse in February. I've not been a nurse that long. And in the ER, we don't get to see a lot of success stories and people that God does choose to save. And it's been such a powerful testament to me, just to see you two and your faith and your love, and just how kind you've been to me. I even got to go up and visit a couple times while I was working over the next week and a half he was there. And I just remember coming back down and telling everyone in the ER, being like, guys, he is getting discharged tomorrow. This is crazy. And no one could believe it. It's just so, so powerful to see how good God is.
Dwayne was moved to an open area in the ER, opposite side of the nurses' station. His bed was surrounded with nurses and doctors and staff, and as Lindsay's mentioned, there was just a host of people in there that night. I was informed that the catheterization team had been called, and they were on their way to do an emergency catheterization. Soon after, a nurse came to get me. She said I could go see him and tell him bye. I walked over to where he was laying. I didn't tell him bye. Wasn't going to tell him bye. I told him I loved him, his family's here, and they love him, and the doctors were going to take good care of him. He's going to be okay. The chaplain walked with me to the Heart and Vascular Hospital waiting area where I met the rest of the family. We all arrived there at about the same time. And a couple of hours later, or I'm not even sure of the time, I lost all track of time that night. But Dr. Hall, our cardiologist who actually did the catheterization, came. And he told us that Dwayne has had a cardiac arrest and that his heart is very weak. He also had a heart attack in the past, and Dwayne does not know anything about that. He was probably working one day and thought, oh, that hurt, let's go. And he didn't remember having a heart attack in the past. But the doctor said that a section of his heart was dead, and that the heart had built its own bypass around it. And so he said that Dewayne was not a candidate for heart surgery or for stents or for a bypass, and that he does have a tube to breathe for him because he was only breathing for himself at about 20%. Again, Dr. Hall kept making it clear to us, if he makes it. He made that statement a few times, if he makes it, if he makes it. But I kind of ruled that out of my mind. Didn't think about that. But they said if he makes it, that they would treat him with a pacemaker, defibrillator, and they would discuss all that with other doctors later in the next few days. Would make that decision today. But God still had control of Dewayne's step. That was what it was.
Now, I don't remember any of the things that we've just talked about here. I don't remember any of that. The last thing I remember was that shock. I don't remember Lindsay giving me the CPR, but the next thing I remembered, I woke up in ICU about 8 or 9 hours later. I was flat on my back with a breathing tube in my throat, in which that was quite bad. My hands and my feet were all tied. I had 5 IVs in my arms, and I had a port in my neck. And I would normally have felt very claustrophobic. However, I only felt peace and calm, with no anxiety, no fear, but with a deep sense of God's presence. It was amazing. I could hear the doctors talking about what to do next between themselves. But I was thinking, God is directing this ship, and I don't have to worry about it. I had no worry. Excuse me. The first thing I remember seeing was Carolyn standing by my bed, smiling as I asked her, what happened? And she and Gwen, and of course I can't ask. I'm mouthing that out of one corner of my mouth because I could only see out of my right eye because the breathing tube was covering up my left eye. And I asked her what happened. She and Gwen happened to be there, which was another miracle. She lives in Ohio. She can't be here today. She wanted to very bad because of some health issues. She can't be here. And I asked what happened, and she and Gwen explained to me that I had a cardiac arrest and where I was at in ICU. But here there was some other questions I tried to mouth out, but here's one of the funniest. Carolyn had stepped away from my bed, and Travis, my nurse, came to me and said, I need to take your vitals. And he began to take that. He took my temperature, and then he looked at me, he said, just a little bit toasty, buddy. Then I heard him say 104. He actually said 100.4, but I heard 104. And I wanted to ask Carolyn about that temperature being 104. So I started using my hand signals because I couldn't talk, and I said, and her or Gwen, either one could seem to figure it out. And finally, I did it, went through the motions again, and she finally said, 104, oh yeah, thank you, that's so sweet. You're thinking of our anniversary, October the 10th, 4. And here's what I did. I said, no. I wanted her to know that was a no. She never figured it out, or Gwen either, so I gave up.
This next part is all about you, our church family. Pastor Rick sent out a request on the prayer phone chain about 9 a.m., and it was about that time that we were in the ICU with just a whole team of doctors standing around his bed and care team and all, and they were discussing what they were going to do about that breathing tube. And we knew Dewayne wanted it out pretty badly. They're not comfortable at all. And so they were saying, well, we can't take it out until the heart monitor was right there, and it was registering 80. He said, we can't take it out until that number gets to 35. And I looked at Gwen, I said, we got a long way to go here. And a few minutes later, I looked at it again. Oh, yeah, they did tell me. He said it will be tomorrow. They told me it will be tomorrow before we can get this tube out. I'm sorry, I should follow my notes. So it'll be tomorrow before we can get that tube out. Said he's only breathing at 80% at 20% on his own. And so on the monitor, in 1 minute it was at 80. Just a very short time after that, just a matter of minutes, it was 50. It dropped from 80 to 50. By noon that day, they were taking the tube out on the same day. Thank you to my church family. Thank you for stopping what you were doing that day and praying for Dewayne. And if you didn't stop your work, thank you for the prayers while your hands kept busy doing what you were doing, but you prayed. And God answered your prayers. He heard you. He heard ours. And he delivered him from that tube at noontime that day.
Well, we spent 7 painful days in the hospital, but with excellent nursing. Even in my pain, I tried to be very upbeat with the staff with a few jokes. When physical therapy came, I told them they could tell me what they wanted me to do, and I would tell them if I was going to do it. One nurse was a little upset with me because I got up and went to the bathroom by myself. So she put sensors on my bed and on my chair so that would warn her. And then that day she came in and I had gone to the bathroom. I told her, I said, my daddy always said it's easier to get forgiveness than to get permission. And she began to laugh at that. That's the first time she had broken a smile. So then all during that night, every time she would come in, she says, I'm here for forgiveness. Because they would come in I could never figure this out, come in at 3 o'clock to wake you up to weigh you and stuff like that. I never understood that. Or to give you a sponge bath. On Monday, October the 20th, a pacemaker and defibrillator was placed in my chest, and I was discharged on Tuesday. My first night home was a very hard night. I had slept very little in the hospital, so was very tired and a lot of pain from the CPR. But I appreciate it. I was awake about every 30 or 40 minutes that night, and just before sunrise, as I lay in my bed and unable to move or to turn over or unable to get out of bed, just before sunrise, I could hear Chris, Austin, and all the employees coming into the farm and then going out with equipment for a full day of work. My heart wanted to be up and in the middle of all the activity, but my body said no way. I began to pray for Chris and for Kim and Austin and each one of the employees by name and for the farm, to praise the Lord because the farm was in good hands. Tears flowed from my eyes and down my face as I lay there flat on my back, and praise flowed from my heart, and I had never experienced the comfort and presence of God in such a mighty way. That moment was so precious, also almost too sacred to talk about. Then I asked Carolyn to play a song by C.C. Winans, The Goodness of God, and the praise continued. After that one played, the next song came on, Come Jesus Come. Since that morning, I have probably listened to those two songs 100 times. Now I want us all to worship together as we listen to these two songs. The lyrics of the first song, Goodness of God, are very special to me. And I'm going to just read a few of the lyrics. It says, I love your voice. You have led me through the fire. In the darkest night, you are close like no other. I've known you as a father, and I've known you as a friend, and I've lived in the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after me. I found that God's goodness was in front of me, ordering my steps. It was around me, surrounding me, and the presence and the peace and his comfort was there. The words actually tells my life story, as I know it does for many of you. Many of you have experienced those long, dark nights, have experienced the pain of a heartbreak when God was close like no other. And the second song, Come Jesus Come, is an invitation to all the hurting, the bereaved, the broken, and the lost. As second song plays, we will invite you to join us in worship and praise. Pastor Rick and the deacons will be here to pray with anyone who has special needs. But feel free to come to the altar on the second song if you have a special need. And I'm going to ask the men to play those songs now at this time as we worship together.